Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're looking at something I found pretty interesting.
Okay.
It's about how much attention different types of social inequality get on Twitter. Yeah, and you know, we see all this stuff.
Right.
And this study specifically looked at ageism
Oh, interesting.
and compared it to sexism and racism, which we hear so much more about.
Yeah, yeah.
So they analyzed like over 150 million tweets
Wow.
from 2007 all the way to 2022.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of data.
15 years.
Yeah, 15 years worth. So I'm
Yeah.
really glad we have our expert here to help us sort through all this.
Yeah, it's a fascinating data set.
Okay, so was there anything in this study that really jumped out at you?
Yeah, well, one of the big things I noticed was that ageism-related hashtags were used way less than ones for sexism or racism.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're talking a really big difference here.
Right.
Ageism hashtags showed up about 60 times less than racism ones.
Right.
And 24 times less than the sexism ones.
Okay, so those are pretty big numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like ageism is a new problem.
Right.
It's been around forever.
Exactly. And that's what makes these findings so interesting.
Yeah.
It kind of shows how ageism, even though it's everywhere, it doesn't really get the same level of attention or, outrage as these other types of inequality.
Right.
It's almost like it's just so normal now that we just kind of accept it.
Yeah, like nobody even notices it.
Right.
Okay, so did the researchers look at how these discussions changed over time?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
They found that all three types of hashtags, the ageism, sexism, and racism ones, all increased over those 15 years.
So all of them were going up.
Yeah. It's kind of tough to tell exactly why.
Right.
Could be just more awareness or...
Yeah, more people on Twitter.
Exactly. Or maybe social norms are changing.
Right.
But the thing is the conversation, changing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So they also did what they called a peak analysis. And they were basically looking for moments when events caused huge spikes in hashtag use.
Okay.
Like, for example, the murder of George Floyd led to this huge surge in the use of hashtag Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And the hashtag Me Too movement caused, a big jump in discussions around sexism.
Yeah, I remember that.
But then they looked at ageism.
Okay.
Did any big shocking incidents of age discrimination cause the same kind of spikes?
That's where things get kind of unexpected.
Oh,
Those ageism hashtag spikes didn't really follow the same pattern.
Oh, so they weren't caused by
Not the same way.
a major event.
Yeah, they weren't really tied to like breaking news stories.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So what did cause them then?
Well, they tended to spike around events like the International Day of Older Persons.
Oh, yeah.
Or, big academic conferences about aging.
So it sounds like ageism isn't causing the same kind of widespread outrage.
Yeah, it's not really hitting the same nerve.
Why do you think that is?
That's the question, isn't it? Like, why doesn't ageism get that immediate reaction?
Yeah.
Is it harder to see?
Right.
Or is it just so baked into our society now that we don't even react anymore?
So the study also found that the main people talking about ageism on Twitter
Yeah.
were academics and policymakers.
Yeah, it seems like it.
So could it be that ageism is mainly being talked about in like academic circles
It's possible.
and not really reaching the general public?
Yeah, that's a big takeaway from this.
Okay.
I mean, the academics and policymakers are super important.
Right, they're the ones doing the research.
Yeah, but there's this gap between that and what the public understands.
All right.
And ageism needs to be part of like our everyday conversation.
Yeah, not just something that people are studying.
Exactly.
Okay, so this research really highlights how ingrained ageism is.
Yeah, it really does.
We've got a lot to think about here.
Yeah.
Why don't we take a quick break?
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll talk about what we can do to challenge ageism.
Sounds good. It's interesting that this study only looked at Twitter.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if the same things would happen on other platforms.
Oh, totally. Like would Instagram with its focus on like pictures and stuff
Right.
tell a different story, or Facebook where there are more older people.
It'd be fascinating to see a comparison
Right.
across all the different social media, you know, see how different groups of people are engaging with these topics.
Yeah. And I'm also curious about like different places.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think location influences how ageism is talked about online?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Cultural contexts shape how people view aging.
Right.
What might be considered ageist in one place could be totally normal in another.
It's like that saying.
It is.
One person's trash is another person's treasure.
Exactly.
So we've got all these different platforms, different cultures, different
Mm-hmm.
generations.
Yeah.
How do we even begin to untangle this?
I think one thing to consider here is intersectionality.
Yeah, intersectionality.
Oh.
It's like how different forms of oppression can overlap,
Exactly.
like ageism,
Mhm.
sexism, and racism.
Yeah, it's not just about adding them up.
Right.
It's about how they interact.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a younger woman of color
Right.
might face a unique set of challenges.
Totally different from an
Yeah.
older white woman or a younger
Yeah.
white man.
It's about recognizing those specific challenges.
Yeah, like those Russian nesting dolls.
Yes.
Gotta look at all the layers.
Exactly.
So back to Twitter specifically.
Okay.
Does the study say anything about the types of ageism discussions?
It does, and this goes back to our earlier point about academics and policymakers.
Yeah.
A lot of the tweets focused on
Okay.
policy research and advocacy.
So less about personal stories.
Yeah, more big picture stuff.
And while that's important,
Oh, absolutely.
we also need to hear from the people who have actually experienced ageism.
Definitely.
You know, their stories can make it
Yeah.
more real for others.
You know, you could read a ton of statistics about poverty,
Mhm.
but hearing one person's story
Yeah.
about struggling to make ends meet can totally change your view.
Right.
That's a great point.
So how do we create those spaces
Okay.
where people feel safe sharing their stories?
First, we need to educate ourselves about what ageism even is. A lot of people don't even realize they're being ageist.
It can be so subtle.
Right, like all those jokes about senior moments or over the hill.
It seems harmless, but it's not.
We need to call it out.
Okay, but sometimes it's hard to know what to say,
Yeah, I get that.
especially with family or friends.
Well, even small things can help.
Okay, like what?
Like gently correcting someone's language.
Saying something.
Someone says, he's too old for that job.
Yeah.
You could say, why do you think age matters for that job?
Right. So just asking a question
Exactly.
instead of getting defensive.
It can make them stop and think.
Right. And it's less about cancel culture and more about understanding.
I like that.
And this applies online, too.
Right.
We can use social media to challenge ageist stuff
Mm-hmm.
and promote positive views of aging.
Exactly.
So instead of just liking that funny meme,
Yeah,
maybe share an article about older adults' contributions.
perfect.
But before we get too carried away,
Okay.
we need to talk about self-reflection.
Oh, that's so important.
Yeah, we all have biases.
Yeah, whether we realize it or not.
Look in the mirror before pointing fingers.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what do I believe about aging?
Right.
Where did those beliefs come from?
Yeah.
Am I holding on to stereotypes without even knowing it?
So how do we challenge those internal biases?
One thing that helps is
Yes.
exposing yourself to different perspectives.
Okay.
Read books, watch movies,
Mhm.
talk to older adults from different backgrounds.
So like intentionally expand your social circle to
Exactly.
include people who challenge your views.
The more we see the real diversity of aging,
Yeah.
the more we can break down those harmful stereotypes.
So it's not just about changing the conversation online.
Right.
It's about changing how we think about aging ourselves.
It all starts there.
This has been a really insightful conversation,
I agree.
but we're not quite done.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll wrap things up
That's good.
with some final thoughts on how we can all create a more age-inclusive world.
I like it.
When we talk about ageism, it's easy to just focus on, older adults,
Yeah.
but younger people are affected too.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. That's a point a lot of people miss.
Yeah.
It's not just about how we treat older people.
Okay.
It's also about the expectations and limits we put on younger folks.
Right. Like assuming someone's too young to be a CEO
Exactly.
or too inexperienced to have a valid opinion.
It's like we just box people in based on their age.
Yeah, and that's not fair to anybody.
Right. No matter what age they are.
We miss out on so much potential when we do that.
Totally.
Whether it's the wisdom of older folks
Mhm.
or the fresh ideas from younger generations.
It's all important.
Imagine if we stopped separating ourselves by age
Oh, that'd be amazing.
and really started connecting more.
Think about what we could accomplish.
Yeah, like mentoring programs
Yes. Connecting experienced older adults with young professionals.
or community projects where different generations work together.
We could learn so much from each other.
It's a win-win for everyone.
Absolutely.
Older adults sharing their knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and younger people bringing new ideas.
And maybe those connections would help break down stereotypes, too.
I think you're right.
You know, when you actually get to know someone,
Yeah.
it's hard to hold on to those biases.
It's like reading statistics is one thing,
Yeah.
but getting to know a real person
Mm-hmm.
can totally change your perspective.
Couldn't agree more.
So this research shows us that ageism is getting more attention,
Yeah, it is.
but it still has a long way to go.
Definitely.
to catch up to other forms of inequality.
And that lack of attention has real consequences.
It affects everything.
Yeah. Health, well-being.
Jobs,
Yeah.
social inclusion.
This is something we need to take seriously.
It really is a systemic issue.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
Don't let ageism be the forgotten ism.
Okay.
Talk about it, challenge it, and find ways to connect with people from different generations.
Yeah, build those bridges.
Exactly. Because age is just a number.
That's so true.
What really matters is our experiences and the connections we make.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And to our listeners, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
What are your experiences with ageism?
Have you seen it?
Share your stories with us on social media.
Let's keep this conversation going.
Absolutely. Until next time,
Okay.
keep diving deep.